Welcome to the channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and press the bell icon to stay updated with every new story. The Mother's War. They thought beating a black girl into a coma in the middle of a high school hallway would silence her forever. But what those bullies didn't know was that her mother wasn't just any parent. She was the storm that would burn their entire school to the ground. In a world where money and privilege usually buy silence, this time, every cover-up only added fuel to her fire. Chapter 1. The Attack. The bell rang at Brookfield High, signaling the start of class. Students crowded into the hallway of Block A, dim light filtering through glass windows, reflecting off shiny silver-gray tiles. Elena Martinez, in the middle of the crowd, hugged her bag tightly to her chest, bowed her head, and walked quickly. She had only been here for 2 weeks, and her dark brown face was always surrounded by prying eyes. Today, the atmosphere was heavier than usual. She had a feeling something was going to happen. "Hey, new kid!" A harsh voice rang out, mixed with giggles. Marcus Thompson appeared like a wolf leading a pack, his blue and yellow baseball jacket standing out, a long wooden bat in his hand. Next to him were Tyler Reed, Jason Cole, and Sarah Prescott. This group was known as the underground power in Brookfield, and no teacher dared mess with them because Marcus was backed by the Thompson Foundation, the school's largest donor. Marcus blocked Elena's way in the middle of the hallway. With a strong jerk, her bag flew out of her hand and fell to the ground, scattering books everywhere. "Is this heavy? Are you hiding bricks to fight?" He laughed, his eyes glancing from head to toe with contempt. His tone was deliberately sour, embedding discrimination that only those who had experienced it could clearly feel. Elena took a step back, wanting to avoid the encirclement, but her back hit the row of orange lockers. The crowd of students stopped, forming a circle like spectators waiting for a match. Several phones had their cameras turned on, flashing red and blue lights. "Live stream, let's have fun!" Sarah Prescott shouted loudly, her voice full of excitement. Her voice was like a spark, causing many students to immediately open TikTok and Instagram, preparing to record the entertainment. Jason Cole laughed coldly, using a stick to knock on the locker door. Each knock resounded like a drumbeat, making Elena jump with each beat. Elena tried to take a deep breath, swallowing her fear. She took a half step forward, intending to pick up her books. But Marcus was faster, flicking them away with the toe of his shoe, his eyes never leaving her like a predator who had found his target. "Who do you think you are, walking across this hallway like it's yours? I make the rules at Brookfield." The air was thick. A few students whispered, "Poor girl," but no one dared to step in. At the same time, Ms. Rodriguez, the math teacher, came from afar. She stopped, watching the scene, her hands clenching her lesson plans. Her gaze wavered between the trembling Elena and the wolf-like group of bullies. She hesitated, her feet stopping, not daring to move any further. The silence of the adults made Elena feel even more alone. Marcus twirled the baseball bat in his hand, the polished wood reflecting the fluorescent lights. "Want a pass? You have to pay a toll, and here the toll is getting hit." The crowd roared in approval. Elena tried to squeeze out of the way, but her foot slipped on the notebook and she lost her balance, falling hard to the floor. Her shoulder hit the edge of the locker. Sharp pain shot through her, numbing her completely. Laughter erupted from Jason and Tyler, and Sarah turned her phone closer to record Elena's confused face. A wave of panic rose in Elena's chest. Her heart was racing, her throat dry. She wanted to scream, but her voice was tight. Above her, the shadow of Marcus's bat was rising slowly, deliberately, so that all eyes were on her. Whispers echoed through the hallway, then fell silent as he raised the bat like a judge about to pronounce sentence. Elena's eyes caught the logo on the shaft, a clearly engraved circle of letters. Thompson Foundation. The image made her shiver. Not just a weapon in the hands of a bully, but a symbol of the entire system of power that nurtured and tolerated him. Ms. Rodriguez raised her hand as if to intervene, then lowered it, her eyes averted. She knew to oppose Marcus was to oppose the Thompson family, and possibly lose her job. In the student circle, phones were held high. The screens flashed with hundreds of comments. "Hit her! This will go viral for sure! That girl is dead!" The bat came down with a hiss through the air. One strike, not just on Elena, but shattering the illusion that Brookfield was a safe place. One strike, and the entire patronage system of this school was exposed. Phone screens vibrated with exploding comments, opening a chain of events that could not be stopped. Chapter 2. The Hospital Cover-Up. The ambulance siren tore through the night air, rushing straight to St. Mary's Hospital. The car door opened, and two medical staff hurriedly pushed the stretcher down. On it, Elena Martinez lay motionless, her face pale, one temple bruised purple, her lips trembling as if she was about to lose her last breath. The cold neon lights in the emergency room shone down, turning her small body into a fragile shadow about to disappear. Severe traumatic brain injury. Unconscious for more than 7 minutes. The medical staff's voice rang out urgently. Dr. Martinez, his white coat stained with coffee, walked quickly over, his eyes flashing with vigilance. His vast experience made him understand that these seconds were the deciding factor between life and death. "Put on oxygen. Check pupils now," he shouted. Nurse Lisa immediately put an oxygen mask on Elena's nose, while another colleague attached the ECG wire. The monitor beeped steadily but faintly, like a fragile melody that could stop at any moment. Dr. Martinez bent down, his flashlight quickly scanning Elena's eyes. The pupils were dilated, slow to respond to light. The results were not encouraging. "Severe concussion. Take her to the CT room immediately. If there's internal bleeding, we'll need emergency surgery." The nurses pushed the stretcher away, wheels screeching on the white tiles. A heavy door closed, leaving behind only the echo of the erratic heartbeat on the monitor. The entire emergency department fell silent for a few seconds, as if everyone held their breath. Lisa, her face young but her eyes hardened from years of witnessing patient pain, stood next to Dr. Martinez as he took notes on the diagnosis. She lowered her voice, whispering, "Doctor, someone called. They said they want to adjust the accident notes. Not hit, but fall." Dr. Martinez looked up, his eyes sharp as knives. "Who?" No name, but the voice was very firm. They said they had already spoken to the hospital administration. Lisa hesitated, her voice trembling. Dr. Martinez held back a sigh and continued typing. On the electronic medical record screen, the words "concussion due to fall" appeared, cold and emotionless. The weapon was gone. The truth was gone. Only a rewritten script remained to protect someone. In the dark room, the beeping of the heart monitor mixed with Elena's labored breathing, sounding like a suspended sentence. Dr. Martinez knew clearly that this was no ordinary accident. The bruise on the shoulder, the swelling on the forehead, all showed the force of impact from a hard object. But the record said, "fall." Just one line changed, and everything was distorted. Lisa looked at the screen, biting her lip. "What if the family asks, Doctor?" Dr. Martinez sat up straight, his eyes tense. "The family will ask, and then we will have to choose. Stand with the truth or stand in the dark." The monitor's green light flickered on their tense faces. For a few seconds, the room was filled with the sound of cold machinery. Then, from the iron door at the end of the hallway, the sound of heavy boots echoed. The door swung open. A woman walked in. Tall, straight-shouldered, her eyes red as if she had cried all night, but her gaze was cold as steel. She stopped right in front of the hospital bed, her hand shaking slightly as she touched Elena's weak arm. It was her mother, Carmen Martinez. When the truth is changed by one line in a file, justice begins to fall freely. Carmen squeezed her daughter's hand, her eyes blazing, as if a declaration of war had just been written in silence. Chapter 3. The investigation begins. The ICU corridor at midnight was eerily quiet. Carmen Martinez stood for a few seconds in front of the glass door, looking at her daughter lying motionless inside. The tubes, the ECG wires, the red and blue flashing monitors, all like a cold wall separating mother and daughter. Carmen took a deep breath. Before, she had breathed in the dust and smoke of the battlefield, had heard the sound of bullets whistling past her ears, had witnessed her comrades fall right next to her. But the sight of her 16-year-old daughter, motionless with a weak heartbeat on the monitor, made her heart ache more than any wound on the battlefield. Dr. Martinez walked out, holding the file. Elena's condition is still dangerous. We've checked the CT scan. Luckily, there's no major bleeding, but if she's in a coma for a long time, we can't say anything yet. Carmen nodded, but her eyes did not leave the file. Let me see. Dr. Martinez hesitated. Her eyes were too sharp, making it difficult for him to refuse. Finally, he handed the file to Carmen. She flipped through the pages quickly, her eyes moving along each line. In just a few seconds, those crimson eyes flared with anger. The words, cause, fall, were like a knife stabbing straight into her heart. She looked up abruptly, her voice cold. Who wrote this? Dr. Martinez swallowed. This is the information on the system. I was just following procedure. I know her injury could not have been caused by a fall, but the order was entered before I started my shift. Carmen clenched the file tightly, her knuckles turning white. I don't believe in coincidences, she said, each word cutting like a knife. At that moment, a man in a gray suit walked in. His badge read, Internal Affairs Investigator, St. Mary's Hospital. He smiled faintly. Mrs. Martinez, I understand your feelings, but I'm afraid sometimes the records have to be written in a way that makes everyone comfortable. Carmen spun around, her eyes like bullets. Comfortable? My daughter was beaten with a bat into a coma. You wrote it down as fall. You were comfortable while she's lying there breathing on a machine. The air was thick, tense as a string that could snap at any moment. Carmen pulled out her phone, her hand shaking slightly but her voice firm. The clock on the screen read exactly 2 a.m. She dialed a number. The phone rang a few times before a sleepy male voice answered. Hello, who is this? Pierce, it's me, Carmen Martinez. You owe me the truth. There was silence on the other end. No more sleepy breathing, just heavy silence, signaling an upcoming confrontation. If the system was corrupted, she would use that system to expose it. Chapter 4. Confronting the School. The morning at Brookfield High was unusually heavy. Principal Marion Richards's office was on the second floor, its 4 glass walls gleaming with the rising sun, giving the impression of transparency but actually concealing layers of darkness. Carmen Martinez entered, a sturdy figure in a dark coat. Following behind was Officer David Pierce, his school security uniform still creased from a busy shift. Already seated were Richards, a woman in her 50s with neatly tied hair, and Vice Principal Peterson, who always had his head bowed, taking notes like a loyal shadow. What do you want, Mrs. Martinez? Richards began, her voice calm but calculating. Carmen didn't beat around the bush. I want all the camera data from Block A, the hallway where my daughter was attacked. Immediately, a moment of silence. Peterson curled his lip, raising his voice. Unfortunately, the hallway cameras were under maintenance that day. Nothing to show. Carmen narrowed her eyes, her lips pursed. Coincidence? Just a technical issue? Peterson repeated deliberately, his voice as indifferent as if reporting an innocuous number. Richards interrupted, sliding a thin file toward Carmen. This is the official report. There was no violence. It was an accidental fall. There is no evidence of assault. The paper was as cold as a knife. Carmen glanced at it, feeling the emotionless words erase the truth. The image of her daughter in a coma flashed through her mind again. Her nails crunched against the edge of the desk. "I saw her injuries," Carmen said, her voice low but sharp as steel. "She didn't fall. She was beaten, and you know it." Richards's eyes averted. "You're insulting the reputation of the school. Get a grip." Carmen slammed her hand down on the glass, causing the file to pop open, pages falling to the floor. The sound shook the room slightly. Pierce leaned forward, ready if things got out of hand. Richards kept her half-smile. "Mrs. Martinez, I understand your concern, but here we're just following procedure. Without the camera data, there's no evidence to prove otherwise." As Carmen walked out of the office, she slowed down, letting Peterson and Richards think she'd given up. But just as they closed the door, Pierce gently touched Carmen's arm, his voice low. "The maintenance log doesn't match. I checked the system. Someone fixed the time last night." Carmen's eyes flashed. A crack had appeared in the seemingly perfect glass wall. "Are you sure?" Carmen asked hoarsely. Pierce nodded vigorously. "I was your student. I know what's real and what's fake. This log has been tampered with." Carmen looked around, then nodded. "If there's no camera, we'll find another lens." She pulled out her phone, her fingers tapping quickly. A message was sent to the right person who could turn things around. Ms. Chen, the technology teacher, the student's most trusted person. No camera? Then they'd open another lens, the students' phones. Chapter 5. The Digital Trail, Brookfield High's computer lab, was at the end of the third-floor hallway, its pale blue LEDs casting shadows over long rows of desks. It was the domain of Ms. Chen, the information technology teacher, a petite woman with steady, intelligent eyes. Her students called her the living firewall because of her strictness, but she was also the one they turned to when they needed help. Carmen walked in, her tall figure causing several students in the media club to look up with wide eyes. She didn't waste time explaining, just saying, "I need the original video of the attack on my daughter before someone deletes it." Ms. Chen nodded, signaling sternly to the group of students on duty. "Maya, Kevin, Rosa, you heard her. Get to work." Maya Kim, the Asian girl with thick glasses, quickly placed her hands on the keyboard. Kevin Williams, a tall black student, opened his laptop to help scan the back-end servers. Rosa Morales, a Latina with curly hair, opened her phone to search for copies of clips on social media platforms. "I saw a few this morning, but by noon they were all gone," Rosa frowned. "Not deleted by users, taken down." "Why?" Carmen asked. "Copyright infringement," Maya replied, her voice skeptical. "But that doesn't make sense. It's just a student-made video." Maya's fingers flew over the keyboard, a series of command line windows popping up. She traced back to the compliant system, her brows furrowing. "There's a shell account. Nameless, but it spammed dozens of takedown requests overnight." Carmen stood behind her, her cold eyes following each line of data that, "Find the IP." Maya bit her lip, her eyes not leaving the screen. After a moment, she paused. "No way." "What's going on?" Kevin looked up. "The IP address isn't random. It matches the County Board of Education office server." Maya swallowed, her hands shaking slightly. "And the Board of Education president is Robert Thompson." The air in the room froze. The keyboard tapping stopped, leaving only the hum of cooling fans. Rosa whispered, "Marcus's father." Carmen clenched her fists, her eyes flashing as if she had just seen the real mastermind. A beating with a bat in the hallway, but behind it was a web of power and manipulation. Ms. Chen quietly took off her glasses, wiped them clean, and looked at Carmen. "I know there's a risk, but I'll keep this data on a private server. If you want, I'll provide a secure copy." Carmen nodded. She didn't thank her, but her eyes said it all. A true ally had just joined the ranks. Maya printed out the IP logs, her hands still shaking, and placed them on the table in front of Carmen. White paper, black text, irrefutable evidence. Carmen took them and folded them carefully. Now I know where to strike. Chapter 6. The Evidence Hunt. The Brookfield High baseball equipment room smelled of wood and damp sweat. The room was narrow, yellow light reflecting off shelves filled with gloves, balls, and dozens of bats stacked haphazardly. But amid the mundane equipment, Carmen was searching for only one thing: the bat that had knocked her daughter down. Officer Pierce followed, his eyes scanning the room like radar. Waiting inside was Coach Williams, a burly man with a wispy beard, a silver whistle dangling from his chest. He crossed his arms, his expression grim. "Mrs. Martinez, I don't know why you're dragging me into this," Williams growled. "The bats are all the same. There's no reason to mess with the team." Carmen stood straight, her gaze cold. "But not all bats are the same. There's one that left blood on the floor of Block A's hallway. I want it now." Williams shrugged, trying to sound nonchalant. "It's lost. Students borrow them and lose them. That's normal." The silence fell heavily. Carmen stepped closer, each step forcing Williams back half a step. "Lost?" Her voice was low but firm, like a punch to his face. "That bat was the murder weapon? And you said it was lost?" Pierce interrupted, his voice firm. "Coach Williams, Mrs. Martinez has the right to ask. I also need to report to higher-ups. If you don't cooperate, we'll have to seal the warehouse." Williams blushed. "Seal? This is a baseball field, not a crime scene." The air was tense. Pierce walked to the corner of the wall, pointing to a secondary camera mounted close to the ceiling, almost hidden by the tool shelf. "What about this? A secondary system used to monitor equipment. Don't tell me it's also under maintenance." Williams paused, panic evident in his flash of expression. Pierce opened his laptop and connected it. A few quick steps, and the screen showed a nighttime video. The storage room was dark, only dimly lit by a flashlight. A figure appeared. Brandon Miller, the baseball team manager, thin but agile. He stealthily opened the shelf and pulled out a bat wrapped in a plastic bag. Just then, a door in the hallway opened. Light shone, and a face was revealed. Vice Principal Peterson. He nodded, signaling Brandon to take the bat. The image stopped. The space in the storage room was silent. Pierce said softly, "This is the murder weapon. And the one who opened the door to make it disappear is Peterson himself." Carmen smiled faintly, a smile full of contempt. When the murder weapon walks away, the one who opens the door is the one most afraid of the light. Chapter 7. Public Confrontation. During recess, the corridor of Block A was like a wadi, or fall of people. Laughter and the sound of shoes hitting tile floors resounded loudly. But when Carmen Martinez appeared, the crowd gradually quieted. She stood straight, her cold eyes scanning each face like a sudden storm. In the middle of the corridor, Vice Principal Peterson was trying to blend in with the flow of students. But when he saw Carmen walking toward him, her tall figure with each step heavy as a hammer, he stopped. A group of students had turned on their phones, live streaming. Bright screens showed their tense faces. Carmen stopped right in the middle of the aisle, saying only one sentence, her voice echoing in the space. "Who opened the warehouse door at 4:43 a.m.? The noise died down. All eyes turned to Peterson. He mumbled, his mouth moving but no words came out. Students began to whisper. Phones raised higher, comments continuously running on screens. "What's going on? Evidence!" Peterson tried to calm down, forcing a smile. "I don't know what you're talking about. This is slander." "Really?" A female voice rang out from the back of the crowd. Rosa Morales stepped forward, holding a phone. She had already plugged the HDMI cable into the TV screen mounted on the wall of the hallway that the media club often used to broadcast school news. In a flash, the hallway filled with light from the big screen. The clip showed the door to the baseball equipment warehouse opening slightly. A figure slipped in, Brandon Miller, the team manager, and clearly a familiar voice. "Hurry up!" Peterson's voice. The crowd exploded. Screams, chatter, phones vibrating. "Oh my God, it's him! The vice principal! Hurry up and stream!" Peterson's face paled, sweating. He stammered, "I was just following orders. It wasn't my decision." Carmen crossed her arms, her eyes icy. "Whose orders?" With no way out, Peterson blurted out, "Principal Richards. She told me to look after the donor's property. She said the bat belonged to the Thompson Foundation. I didn't dare argue." The words dropped like a bomb in the hallway. Students screamed. Live Saint. Reams exploded in views. Comments poured in. The cover-up. The principal was involved too. Thompson bought it all. Carmen didn't say another word. A single question was enough to shatter the veil of silence. She turned to the crowd, her voice clear. "You heard? The truth is never in a closed office. It's right here in the hands of those who dare to record it." Peterson almost collapsed under the pressure. Students cheered, some holding up their phones and shouting, "Justice for Elena!" The chant rippled through the hallways, becoming an unstoppable wave. In a hidden corner, a student secretly turned his phone so that Marcus Thompson, watching from afar, could see the whole scene. Marcus's face was red, his fists clenched so tightly that his veins popped. He slammed the phone down on the floor and roared, "That bitch wants to play war? Okay, I'll show her what war is." Silence breaks with a question, and the entire management is exposed. Chapter 8. Elena Awakens. Dawn crept through the ICU window, painting the white walls pale yellow. The monitor still beeped regularly, but this morning the rhythm sounded different, like something was changing. Carmen Martinez sat close to the bed, her eyes dark from sleepless nights. Her hand still held her daughter's as if it had never left for even a second. The door opened slightly, and Dr. Martinez walked in. His gaze was soft but tense, as if he had been waiting for this moment. Beside him was Nurse Lisa, her face tired but her eyes filled with hope. "Any progress?" Carmen whispered, her voice cracking. Dr. Martinez looked at the monitor, then bent down to check Elena's pupils. He took a deep breath, his fingers lightly touching Carmen's shoulder. "Mrs. Martinez, maybe today is the day we've been waiting for." Carmen could barely breathe. She bent down, her eyes glued to her daughter's face. Then, like magic, Elena's eyelids fluttered just for a moment, but enough to make Carmen choke. "Elena," her voice cracked, trembling. Slowly, Elena's eyes opened. The pale light of dawn reflected in her still opaque pupils, but then slowly coming back to life. She blinked, her lips parting in weak sounds. "Mommy!" Carmen burst into tears rolling down her face. She took her daughter's hand, pressing her forehead to it. "I'm here, baby, I'm here." Lisa stood behind her, her hand covering her mouth, then laughed in relief. "She made it!" Elena slowly turned her head, looking around the room, then back into her mother's eyes. "You're alive." Carmen nodded, holding her daughter's hand tightly. "Yes, you are. And you will never have to fight alone again." At that moment, the room fell into a solemn silence, save for the monitor, but this time it sounded like the music of rebirth. Dr. Martinez cleared his throat. "She's still weak, but waking up from such trauma is a miracle. We have to be cautious, but the good news is she's recovering." Elena closed her eyes slightly, then whispered, "I remember something." Carmen leaned in, getting closer to hear clearly. Tell me, Elena. Anything. I heard someone when I was being dragged before I blacked out. A voice shouted, "Go live!" The room froze. Carmen looked straight at her daughter, her eyes sharp. Are you sure? Elena nodded, though she was still weak. I remember. It was Sarah Prescott. The words fell to the floor like a heavy rock. Lisa covered her chest, gasping for air. Dr. Martinez looked up at Carmen, knowing the importance of these words. Carmen squeezed her daughter's hand, her voice low. Thank you, Elena. You just gave us the last piece of the puzzle. 2 years later, Brookfield High told a different story. The Block A hallway, once the scene of the town shaking incident, was now paved with shiny tiles. Along the walls were photos of students who participated in the Protect Elena movement. In the middle of the wall was a metal plaque engraved with the words, That day Elena fell, the day justice stood up. Elena Martinez, now close to graduating, walked confidently down the hallway. She was healthier, her face radiant. Today, she had a special mission, leading the new 9th grade class. Beside her were Maya, Kevin, and Rosa, faces who had been with her since day one, now leaders of the media club. Elena stopped in front of the plaque, turning to the group of new students. Her voice was low, but clear. Here, 2 years ago, I fell. Not because I was weak, but because the system failed to protect me. But it was from that fall that everything changed. Today, I tell you this story not to scare you, but to remind you that we have the right to be safe, to be heard, and never to be silent. The air was silent. A thin 9th grade boy raised his hand slightly, his voice trembling. I was bullied at my old school. I didn't dare speak because I was afraid of retaliation. But when you tell me this, I feel I can trust you. He finished his sentence and burst into tears. The crowd stirred, a few eyes exchanging apologetic glances. But Elena walked straight up, knelt down at his level, and wrapped her arms around him. You don't have to be silent anymore. At Brookfield, you will be protected, not just by the law, but by all of us. The hallway erupted in applause. New students chanted in unison, "Protect each other!" No one gave orders, but the slogan spread like a wave. At the end of the hallway, Carmen Martinez watched quietly. She was now the district-wide school safety advisor, dressed casually in a suit but still sharp-eyed. She was no longer fighting for just one school, but for the entire system. The verdicts had been clear. Marcus Thompson, 12 years for aggravated assault and obstruction of justice. Coach Williams, 5 years suspended, 2 years probation, banned from working in education. Principal Richards, 8 years in prison, permanent suspension from all educational institutions. Carmen whispered as if to herself, We didn't save a school. We saved the future. The story of Brookfield ended, but the legacy of justice continued far and wide, to be written by generations to come. The day Elena fell was the day an old order collapsed and a new generation rose.